This is the 4K UHD Blu-ray release of Blade Runner: The Final Cut, and it's never looked so good. Ridley Scott is one of the greatest filmmakers alive today, and this is his object lesson in filmmaking. In 1982 it wasn't a huge success at the box office, and I didn't actually see it at the cinema then. I came across it when it was first broadcast on television here in the UK, and even though it was a 4:3 panned and scanned version of the film, it still made an impression. Fortunately, years later we had the director's cut released at cinemas in 1993, and I then got a second chance to view the film on a big screen, and I still have my tickets from that visit to the cinema, the MGM on Shaftesbury Avenue, which today is an Odeon. But I recall the film as always being particularly grainy, of not of very good image quality. But as the years have gone on, it's made me realise that my memory of the poor quality of the film was actually down to the 1998 DVD release. Warner Brothers were huge supporters of DVD in the early days, and if it hadn't have been for Warner Brothers, it's doubtful it would have taken off in the way that it did so early. So Blade Runner hasn't really had a great exposure on the home movie market. It never had the delight of a sumptuous Super 8 release, unlike his previous Alien, which Duran thankfully released in a full-length scope stereo format. It's taken from a print, so not the best quality they ever achieved, but it wasn't too far off. There was also an exceptionally special Laserdisc release, which came with 3 discs, all of them double-sided of course, half an hour of the film on each of 4 sides, and then an extras disc, the like of which I don't think it was ever seen previously, all done in CAV format, so you could freeze frame every frame. And as I recall, the extras disc, I think they even had the entire script in there, and you could go through it frame at a time. Really quite special. And look at the packaging on Thelma and Louise. Just such a shame that we're not getting something like this with modern ultra-high definition Blu-ray releases, but the discs are somewhat smaller now, being the original CD shape. And of course Black Rain, which has got striking similarities in the Osaka location to those used in Blade Runner. Clearly Ridley Scott has his own unique look, and he has a particular penchant for slowly rotating fans, which perhaps give him some of those unique lighting looks. So while it hasn't been possible to see the original 1982 version of Blade Runner, the Criterion Laserdisc has been highly sought after by collectors for years. I've never seen it, but apparently it's got very good picture quality. But you no longer have to worry, because there's a Blu-ray in here with the original 1982 cut, and that comes with Harrison Ford's Marlowe-esque narrative, which perhaps makes the film a little easier to follow for some. I think you can follow the director's cut and the final cut quite easily if you've ever seen the original 1982 version, although his narrative does seem a little unrealistic in places, maybe because he was a little upset of being dragged back to do the narration, because from all accounts it was an unhappy shoot. Perhaps it just goes to show that you don't have to have an entirely joyous production in order to make cinematic history. I'm not sure it would be possible to make this film today. The limitations of the time meant that everything had to be worked out, and it had to look real. That's why it's constantly pouring with rain. It's all shot at night, and they've filled everything with smoke to disguise the limitations of what they had to work with. And that's perhaps something that's lacking with similar productions today, because everything can be done in a computer. But in Blade Runner in 1982, they built all these sets. They worked out how to make them look real. And it must have helped the cast get into their roles and give the believable performances they gave, because everyone cast in this, they come across as perfectly cast. Disc 3 in this pack is the one that contains all the extras. It may be different on the more generally available, I think, 3-disc pack. But the most recent of the extras were made in 2007, so they may not be anything new from previous DVD releases. However, for us movie collectors, those that are really into film, it's a bit of a dream in places, because the team that wanted to restore the film and do this final cut, they managed to track down all the negative elements and the unused pieces, and in cans just like this, with the negatives and even bits of prints that were never used enclosed. And there were the 35mm originals, which, being a negative, you shouldn't really touch with your hands, but as this isn't a negative and it's just a reel of trailers, I won't worry. Harrison Ford is included, being interviewed in the extras. He's actually got a bit of a smile on his face, which is funny because usually he comes across as such a miserable cantankerous sod. I can't help but like him. Takes one to know one, I suppose. But he comes across very well in here, and it seems that perhaps all these years later he realises that his role in Blade Runner was potentially one of his best, if not the best. All the major players involved in the making of Blade Runner are involved in these extras, so it really is quite an historic record of an historic film. Right from that first shot of Vangelis soundtrack, it's got to be one of the best in cinema history. You just know that something special is coming, and then you get that futuristic dystopian cityscape. It's just perfect cinema. And so even if you don't enjoy the film particularly, the 4K quality on this has got to be one of the best, because it captures the film. You can see the grain, it's that sharp. It's just like watching a 35mm print in the home. In fact, it was suggested, and I may do this, I may make a recording of my 35mm projector running a reel, just so I can play the sound of that in the background and transport myself back to 1982 and believe I'm actually watching a 35mm print of Blade Runner at home. It really is that good, and I don't think there's anyone that will not enjoy this film.
Nothing more human than.
The sound, Dolby Atmos now, they've done a really good job on the sound on this. This is worth taking another look at Blade Runner for. So I hope you've enjoyed this look at Blade Runner. I think I've made my views clear that I certainly think it's worth a purchase. Please feel free to leave a comment below, and whether you agree with me or you disagree, and do consider subscribing, because if enough people subscribe, I'll be encouraged to do more of these videos. So if you enjoy it, hit the subscribe button, give it a like, and maybe you'll join me for the next video. Until then, bye bye for now.